Right, so those of you that know your performance parts know this is an air-to-water charge cooler. This is admittedly way too big for the purpose that I'm using it for. They're 3.5-inch inlets and outlets. So yeah, it's a big beast of a charge cooler. But it was 35 quid plus shipping. How could I turn that down? Haven't tested it yet, don't know whether it leaks or not, so we'll find out. But for that price, I'm pretty happy. Now, I don't know whether I'll use this one or a different one for what I've got planned, but basically a lot of you who will have seen the throttle body video that I sort of messed up yesterday, but the 3-inch throttle body. Now, the reason for all this is I plan to make the CLK's whole intake system 3-inch. Now that might seem counterproductive because it will inherently lower the boost pressure, essentially. The larger you pipe, the lower the boost pressure, it causes pressure drops, and this thing will cause a hell of a pressure drop. So I don't know whether I'll run with this one or whether I'll get a smaller one for this, but at the price this was, I couldn't turn it down. What we got here is a cooler that I bought for, it's actually an oil cooler, but I think I should be able to get away with it using it for coolant. I basically bought this back when we did the 2JZ GS300 build. Bought this to try and help the transmission cope with the loads better, but I ended up never using it. So I've had this sitting around since then, and it's a nice beefy core. It should flow well enough, in theory. And that's a wonderful thing. And obviously just some hose. Now, I don't so much like regular intercoolers. They're old technology now. They're basic and they simplify the system a lot, but they're not the most efficient way of cooling your boost. Cheap charge coolers like this can also be a risk because you can end up with them either fracturing or leaking, and then you put a load of water into your intake, which can be fatal for your engine. But basically what I plan to do is convert the whole intake system to 3-inch, from the supercharger through the charge cooler to the throttle body. So the pressure will be a lot lower, but the volume will still be the same. It'll have less resistance, which in theory should bring down intake temperatures a lot, as well as make the supercharger that little bit more efficient. I will also probably port the supercharger, and at some point I will overspin it, because doing this setup on the standard boost pressure, it's hardly going to have any effect. But what my main thing I want to try is, and it is only try, it's only an experiment, it may not work, it may totally backfire, but I like to try things, especially things that in theory shouldn't have good results. What may happen with this is, because these M111 engines are so sensitive to DET, what you get when you up your boost pressure is the ECU pulling the timing all the time. If you've ever wondered why, when you've overspun your supercharger, your car doesn't always feel consistent from day to day, and that's because it's so sensitive to the intake air temperature that it's always messing about with your timing. It's pulling your timing here and there. And the main problem with that is you're losing power. The more advanced your timing, the more power you can get. There's a point where obviously adding timing has little to no effect and starts maybe working a bit backwards. But for the most part, I want to be able to try and get the stock ECU to keep the advanced timing instead of pulling it out all the time, because the Eaton M62 supercharger is inherently inefficient. it loves to turn itself into a heat pump when you overspin it. Now, Ben doesn't like the superchargers, and I'm not the biggest fan of superchargers, but this channel is about the M111, which is fitted with a supercharger most of the time, unless somebody's turboed it or removed the supercharger for a turbo. So I want to be able to show all the different experiments that you can do if you want to try this kind of method. Now, I might get one half the size of this, which is more sensible. You can get the little barrel type charge coolers. What I'm going to use for a pump is a Mercedes auxiliary heater pump. You notice them sat down in the compressor cars, particularly. I can't remember where they are in the NA cars, but in the compressor cars, they're sat down around the airbox area, I think it is. And that's the auxiliary heater pump. And I'm going to use one of them for this. It should shift enough water. I'm not going for big power, I'm not big pressure, or even that big of a volume of air. I just want to bring down the resistance on the air to bring down the charge temperatures. And this is purely a bit of fun, so it may work, it may not. Regardless of what is thought about this, I'm still going to try it. Because that's the whole, like I say, that's the whole point of this channel. It's a bit of fun. It's educational, help, and silly experiments like this. Now, I don't know when I'll actually get round to this, due to cost and needing a few more bits. I'm going to pick up some of my AM fittings and just check this is the right pipe next week. See if I've got any reducers, because I've got loads of silicon couplers at home, and try and find some fittings for this, because these are like 25mm. I'm not sure if they're -16. I have a feeling they are. Seems pretty common on charge coolers this size, but this one is absolutely massive. It must be rated to close to 1,000 horsepower. It's way bigger than what I need, but it was cheap and I couldn't turn it down. So we'll see where we go with that. It will probably fall on its face, but it's a bit of fun to try. So by being able to advance the timing, I have my way of thinking is it may make it a bit more efficient. So even overspinning the supercharger, you're getting the same volume but at less pressure. So obviously it does affect performance a bit, but if you can bring the timing forward, it may have a better effect. Anyway, that's enough yabbering for this one. Just thought I'd explain that, because I've been saying I've got a lot of ideas for the crazy intake. This is part of it, and it does require making all new manifolds for the supercharger and that, but it's purely experimental and a good bit of fun. So stay tuned for that. At some point I'll try and get into the actual doing fun stuff again soon. It's just things have been a little bit difficult. So I hope this has been an interesting watch, and I've pretty much got it in one, so that makes a change. If you're enjoying the channel, please subscribe. If you like what you've watched, like it, share it, anything you want. And thank you to everyone that has subscribed and is supporting the channel. Thank you guys, and see you in the next one.